I stared at my phone. I stared at my phone as though the numbers on the screen could rearrange themselves and undo the reality before me. 0. Not a cent left. Every hard-earned dollar gone. 80,000 vanished into Jackson's account, my son, my own blood. I felt the cold weight of betrayal settle in my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, in the faded comfort of my worn armchair, letting silence fill the room. Outside, the world hummed along. A neighbor's dog barked. The ice cream truck jingled its cheery tune down the street. Life kept moving, ignorant of the storm that had just landed on me. A call came through from Doris, my neighbor and friend for decades. She spoke cautiously, as if worried my heart might shatter over the distance. Jackson and his new wife, Tanya, and her mother, Rhonda, were in Rome, smiling, laughing, living the life I had spent years building for him. My lips curved into a small, knowing smile, a smile not of joy, but of quiet recognition. The moment I had been waiting for was finally here. For years, I had worked like a shadow in the lives of others. I cleaned houses, washed floors, scrubbed toilets, and scrubbed walls until my arms ached and my back screamed. I had raised Jackson alone, giving him my everything: meals, sleep, comfort, love, and opportunity. And slowly, like a vine strangling a tree, Tanya had crept into his life, distorting his perception, planting subtle seeds of greed. Missing bank statements, small suspicious transfers, little lies that accumulated into theft. But I had learned patience, observation, strategy. While Jackson basked in Rome, thinking himself untouchable, I moved quietly. My notebook, hidden beneath the bed, was opened. I wrote in careful, precise letters, "This is not the end. It is the beginning. My silence will strike harder than any scream." Walter, a childhood neighbor and lawyer, came over the next day. I had collected documents, statements, and evidence. "What they've done is criminal," he said, flipping through the papers I had gathered. "They've forged signatures, tried to claim your house, manipulated accounts." I didn't need sympathy. I needed facts, accuracy, proof. I watched him carefully, noting how his brow furrowed with disbelief. That disbelief fueled me more than anger ever could. Brenda, a retired accountant, became my guide in the labyrinth of finance. She taught me to trace every transaction, verify every email, examine every ledger. Every dollar taken, every document falsified, was recorded meticulously in my red notebook. Meanwhile, Jackson and Tanya flaunted their ill-gotten lifestyle in Rome. I studied them from afar, watching their social media, reading between the lines of their selfies, their messages. Jackson was beginning to see cracks, though he didn't yet realize it. Small hints of mistrust began to ripple through his smile. The call from Dr. Evans came like a distant bell, tolling a warning I had always known, but refused to face. Advanced leukemia. 6 months, maybe less. For a moment, I considered fear, medication, treatment, tears, but instead, I understood the truth. I had a plan. The disease could not steal my dignity, my justice, or my final act of control. I walked the streets I knew so well. Each place I passed whispered a memory. The market where I once cleaned floors, the street where Jackson had almost been hit by a car, the faces of neighbors who had witnessed my struggle and survival. Each step anchored me in my purpose. Back home, I opened the wooden box beneath my bed. Inside were photographs, letters, fragments of a life spent giving. I traced Jackson's small hands in a photo from his childhood and whispered, "No more praying. The work begins." The first steps were legal. With Walter's help, I filed complaints against Jackson for forgery, froze his bank accounts, and documented everything meticulously. Every action, every fraudulent attempt, every deception, recorded. My red notebook filled with careful notes, observations, and strategies. I reminded myself daily, this was not revenge. It was justice. A quiet, deliberate reclaiming of what had been stolen from me. Jackson and Tanya, far away, were beginning to stumble. Tanya sent secret messages that hinted at betrayal, and Jackson started thinking of me, of my voice, my love, my patience. For the first time, he felt the weight of wrongdoing. Brenda guided me through every accounting detail, every step of financial redirection. Walter advised me on legal nuances. I was ready. When the time came, I confronted Jackson, not with anger, not with shouting, not with tears, but calmly, quietly, like a witness to his own mistakes. At the American Embassy, I handed him a yellow envelope. Inside were childhood photos, letters, memories of a son I had once nurtured with all my heart. "I didn't take anything from you," I said softly. "I simply stopped what you were taking from me." Jackson's shame was absolute. For the first time, he understood what he had lost, and I left him with the lesson of patience, dignity, and quiet justice. I returned home, weakened by illness, but at peace. My neighbors cared for me, quietly honoring a life lived with sacrifice and love. I became a quiet legend, living my final months with serenity. Jackson returned to the United States, empty-handed, humbled. He visited my house discreetly, leaving small offerings, confronting the consequences of his actions. When I passed, surrounded by flowers and love, he finally comprehended the depth of my life, my lessons, and my silent, unstoppable justice. In my red notebook, he found the instructions, the memories, the wisdom I had left behind. Through it, he learned that love, dignity, and justice can exist without anger, only with patience, clarity, and moral courage. Jackson thought he had escaped me. He lounged by the fountain in Piazza Navona, laughing with Tanya and Rhonda, sipping espresso as though the world had been made for him alone. Every smile was calculated, every gesture meant to show that he had won. He didn't know that while he basked in sunlight and marble, I was quietly closing in on him with the precision of a predator. Tanya leaned closer, whispering conspiratorial words about my supposed oblivion. "Mom won't even notice," she said, laughing. "Better we enjoy this while it lasts." Rhonda chuckled harshly, a sound that made Jackson shift uneasily. But he remained silent, unwilling or unable to question the world they were building together. He had forgotten the mother who had taught him kindness, patience, and strength. He had forgotten me. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, I worked quietly, deliberately, every day a step closer to the justice I had long imagined. I had Brenda and Walter by my side, advisors who knew the rules, the loopholes, and the law as well as I knew the streets I had walked for decades. Every bank account, every property document, every secret transaction was traced. Nothing escaped me. The red notebook grew heavier with notes, each entry a measured strategy, financial alerts, international banking checks, forged document exposure, public records. I documented everything meticulously, every lie Jackson had built, every theft he had committed, every betrayal. I would not let this stand. Years of hard work had taught me one thing: observe, watch, listen, and wait. That was how I survived Jackson's childhood tantrums, his teenage rebellions, and the manipulations of Tanya and Rhonda. Now, I applied that skill like a scalpel, slicing away the false security Jackson believed he had. I found patterns in his behavior, weaknesses in Tanya's arrogance. While they were in Rome, I discovered attempts to transfer funds from my accounts to theirs. The very messages they thought hidden revealed the truth of their greed. Each small revelation was a triumph. It was the beginning of dismantling their carefully constructed fantasy. Jackson remained blind. He thought wealth and distance could protect him, but every transaction he made, every email he sent, every purchase he flaunted, all of it became evidence, all of it a thread in the net I was weaving. One morning, I sat in the small kitchen I had cleaned and maintained for decades, my hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The sunlight fell across the table where my red notebook lay open, filled with notes, timelines, and plans. I wrote slowly, carefully, as if each word was a step in a dance. Patience, precision, justice. Those 3 words became my mantra. I reflected on my life, the sacrifices made in silence, the nights spent working while Jackson slept safely in his bed. And I smiled, the same smile he would never recognize, a quiet smile that held the promise of reckoning. While Jackson wandered Rome, thinking himself untouchable, I had already started the first moves of a game he didn't know existed. I froze accounts, filed complaints, and documented every illicit action he had taken. The law, for once, was on my side, and I was ready to wield it. The embassy visit became the pivotal moment. I arrived quietly, without fanfare, without anger, without tears, just a mother who had watched her child drift into greed and who had waited for the right moment to reclaim what was hers. Jackson was stunned when he saw me, the weight of guilt already creeping into his expression. He didn't know what was coming. I handed him the yellow envelope, photographs, letters, a tangible memory of the son I had raised with care. "I didn't take anything from you," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I simply stopped what you were taking from me." Shame washed over him like cold water. For the first time, he felt the emptiness that had been accumulating in my life for years, the silence I had kept, the patience I had nurtured. He saw it all in that simple, deliberate gesture. Part 2D, The Weight of Truth. Returning home, I felt the first relief, though my body grew weaker. The cancer was a shadow in my chest, persistent and insistent, but I had reclaimed control over my life, and for a moment, the world seemed to align with justice. Neighbors offered small kindnesses, a basket of food, a friendly smile, a gentle question about my health. I accepted them quietly, savoring the normalcy, the love that Jackson had tried to erase from my life. Jackson returned to the U.S. weeks later, humbled and cautious. He visited the house quietly, leaving flowers, small offerings, signs of repentance. I watched from the window once, my red notebook beside me, filled with lessons, strategies, and memories. The same boy who had stolen from me now confronted the gravity of his actions. The last months of my life were peaceful. My neighbors, my friends, the people who had seen me work and sacrifice, honored me quietly. I spent time in my garden, in my kitchen, and in the little living room where sunlight fell in golden patterns. The red notebook became my companion, a record of life, justice, and love. Jackson learned to sit with his guilt, to confront his mistakes, and to begin his path toward redemption. When I passed, surrounded by flowers and memories, he finally understood the depth of my sacrifices and the lessons I had silently imparted. Through patience, clarity, and quiet action, I had achieved justice. Not vengeance, not anger, but a reclamation of dignity, love, and moral authority. Rome gleamed under the afternoon sun, fountains sparkling, piazzas bustling. Jackson leaned against a marble column, laughing at something Tanya had whispered, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of unease. Messages on his phone hinted at betrayal, and subtle signs of distrust began to gnaw at him. The life he thought secure was starting to feel precarious. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, I moved like a quiet storm. I had learned that patience could be a weapon sharper than any scream. Every legal filing, every account freeze, every document I had collected became a thread in the net I was weaving. Jackson would not escape this time. Brenda helped me trace every transfer. "They think they're clever," she said, adjusting her glasses, "but there's always a paper trail." "Yes," I whispered almost to myself, "and I am following it all." I spent hours going over Jackson's online activity. Each post, each picture, each message was analyzed, He flaunted luxury he had not earned, unaware that I had eyes on every detail. I noted patterns, times when he checked accounts, messages from Tanya, small purchases that betrayed arrogance. With Walter, I planned subtle legal maneuvers, frozen accounts, notifications to international banks, evidence to embassies, each move calculated to pressure Jackson without my having to confront him directly. I didn't need confrontation. The law, patience, and timing would do that for me. I also reflected on the years I had given to him, long nights cleaning homes while he slept safely, meals I skipped so he could eat, opportunities I sacrificed so he could have a chance. It had all led to this moment, the reckoning that would teach him humility, responsibility, and respect. Back in Rome, Jackson began to notice cracks. Tanya's whispers, her subtle messages, started to unsettle him. He saw the luxury that had been stolen from me in his hand, and a tiny voice of conscience began to stir. He remembered my calm face, the quiet dignity that had always guided him. Slowly, unease replaced arrogance. He began to question the foundation of his wealth, the morality of his choices, and the love he had taken for granted. And I, thousands of miles away, watched the threads pull tighter. My patience was working. Every misstep they made, every small betrayal of their own greed, strengthened the case I had built. I returned to the red notebook frequently, writing down strategies, reminders, and observations. Every day the plan evolved. I had frozen Jackson's bank accounts remotely, filed the necessary complaints with authorities, and even started the documentation for the forged will. Walter advised me with calm efficiency. "Ellie, this is meticulous. You're creating a record that cannot be ignored." I nodded, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. Justice was never loud. It was deliberate, and I had honed it to perfection. I thought often of my final months. Cancer was no longer just a shadow. It was a presence, whispering reminders that time was finite. But I refused to let it steal my agency. I walked the streets I knew, revisiting memories of Jackson as a boy, moments of joy and heartbreak. I thought of the market where I had cleaned floors, the street where Jackson almost got hit by a car, the neighbors who had watched me sacrifice silently. Each memory strengthened my resolve. The red notebook became more than just a record. It became a manifesto of justice, patience, and quiet power. I knew that my final act of reclamation would be deliberate, calm, and devastatingly effective. I made a final list in the notebook. Ensure all bank accounts are secure. File remaining legal documents. Prepare embassy visit. Collect evidence of all forgeries. Leave personal letters for Jackson explaining his wrongdoing. I checked each item carefully. Every detail mattered. The day of reckoning had to be perfect, quiet, clear, undeniable. No theatrics, no yelling, no anger, just truth, patience, and evidence. Jackson, in Rome, began to feel the first heavy weight of accountability. He didn't know it yet, but the life he thought secure was about to unravel. And I, his mother, the woman he had wronged, was the one who would quietly deliver the lesson he had ignored for so long. I contacted the American embassy, setting appointments and preparing evidence. I practiced what I would say, carefully, calmly. The envelope containing childhood photos and letters was ready. I whispered to myself as I packed it. No revenge, justice only. Let him see the life he has stolen, the love he has ignored, the dignity he cannot erase. Brenda and Walter provided support, but they did not need to intervene. This was my act, my final lesson, my opportunity to leave a legacy of integrity, patience, and moral clarity. The American embassy was quiet, the kind of quiet that demands attention even without words. I walked through the marble halls, slowly, deliberately, my red notebook tucked under my arm, the yellow envelope secure in my hand. Each step echoed in my mind like the ticking of a clock, counting down not my time, but the moment Jackson would finally face the truth. He was waiting. I could see it through the glass doors, a man who once felt untouchable, now tense, unsure. For the first time in his life, arrogance had no home in his posture. I approached him calmly. No anger, no tears, just a mother's presence, steady and unwavering. "I didn't take anything from you," I said softly, holding the envelope toward him. "I simply stopped what you were taking from me." Jackson's face changed in an instant. Shock, confusion, disbelief, and then guilt, deep and undeniable. He took the envelope with trembling hands. He opened it slowly, finding childhood photographs, letters, memories, evidence of a life I had given him. For the first time, he understood. He saw the sacrifices, the nights of hard work, the love he had ignored, the patience I had shown while he stole and lied. And he felt the weight of every choice he had made, every dollar he had taken, every act of betrayal. Part 4. Silence and understanding. I spoke quietly, letting the truth settle over him like a gentle but inescapable wave. "This isn't revenge, Jackson. It is justice. You have learned, or you will learn, that life demands respect, love, and responsibility. Everything else is temporary, meaningless, and ultimately lonely." He did not interrupt. He could not. The envelope contained more than memories. It contained the proof of his own failings. I left him there, in silence, the lesson delivered without a single scream. Quietly, deliberately, I reclaimed the dignity that had been taken from me, proving that patience could achieve what anger never could. When I returned home, Los Angeles greeted me like an old friend. The streets, the markets, the neighbors, they all carried fragments of my life and memories of a time before betrayal. My steps were slower now, cancer making itself felt, but my heart was lighter. I had done what I needed to do. Neighbors stopped by, quietly offering gestures of care, a basket of fresh fruit, a warm meal, a simple smile. I accepted them graciously, savoring the small kindnesses that reminded me that life was more than money or betrayal. It was community, love, and respect. I spent my days in my garden, reading letters from my past, tending flowers, writing in my red notebook. Each day was a testament to patience, endurance, and moral clarity. Weeks later, Jackson returned to the United States, humbled and careful. He visited the house quietly, leaving flowers and small offerings, signs of repentance. He did not knock, did not speak aloud. He was learning the lessons I had silently taught him. He found pieces of my life left for him, memories, notes, photographs. Through them, he saw the quiet power of patience, the dignity of a mother who had given everything and still held her principles. Even in his humility, he struggled with regret. But slowly, he began to understand the lessons of responsibility, love, and the weight of one's actions. My final months were spent in serenity. The cancer pressed on, but I faced it on my own terms. I walked the streets I loved, sat in my garden, spoke quietly with neighbors, and tended my red notebook. Each day was deliberate, a final act of control over my own life. When I passed, it was surrounded by the simple love of my community. Flowers, memories, and small acts of kindness filled the room. Jackson stood quietly, finally comprehending the depth of my life and the magnitude of what I had left behind. The red notebook remained, a silent testament to love, justice, and moral clarity. He studied it, learning that dignity can exist without anger, that patience can outmatch cruelty, and that life's greatest lessons are often delivered quietly, without fanfare, without violence, but with precision and purpose. In the weeks and months following, Jackson stayed in the house, living among the memories, seeking his own path to redemption. He honored the lessons left behind, understanding that my final act was not punishment, but education, a blueprint for living a life of responsibility, humility, and moral strength. The neighborhood remembered me quietly, telling stories of the woman who endured, sacrificed, and ultimately triumphed with dignity. My life, my death, and my silent justice became a legend not because of revenge, but because of the clarity, patience, and unwavering strength that defined every step I took. And so, my story ended not with anger or chaos, but with serenity, justice, and a mother's quiet, unstoppable resolve.